Hey, my name's David Bertelsall and this is the MV Augusta Brutale 800 RR SCS. All right, the MV Augusta Brutale 800, where do we start? Well, I think that really it makes the most sense to start with how this bike looks, because MV Augusta make beautiful motorcycles. I mean, really just look at it. This seat, the details, how you can go right through and underneath it, the frame, the chassis, how it's exposed, the way that the rear pegs here are put on and attached instead of hanging down, so that it's a much more clean under the seat look. Honestly, this bike is beautiful. We've got this single swing arm as well, which I think really helps to clean up this side of the bike to make it a massive statement. The 3 exhaust tips, which often manufacturers tend to overlook the exhaust on a motorbike, or at least it seems that way, because they're either ugly or big, or just they don't add to the aesthetic of the bike. Yet here on the MV Augusta Brutale, it's a statement piece. It is one of the things that you'll look at and you see this bike and you're like, wow, that really stands out. So for me, this is where MV Augusta really do a great job, because the attention to detail when it comes to the styling, it's got that Italian flair, it's got the just a kind of step up from some of the other bikes which are maybe a little bit boring. Some of the Japanese ones just don't quite have that same like striking look. Then I think it makes sense to move on to the engine. So here we've got a 798cc triple, making 140 brake horsepower and 79 Newton meters of torque. So it's good for about 150 miles an hour if you've got the minerals to take it there. I certainly have not on the roads of Surrey and Kent today. But it's a really nice bike. The interesting thing is that with this engine, because that torque is a little bit lower and that BHP is quite high, it means that really down low in the revs, you don't have a lot of power straight away. But as soon as the revs start to come up, once you're kind of 6,000–7,000, the bike kind of comes alive a little bit. It genuinely doesn't feel right to be sitting in 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 RPM. The bike kind of vibrates a little bit and it doesn't feel comfortable. Yet, as soon as you're in that 6,000, 7,000 RPM, it's kind of that sweet spot. It just starts to feel smooth. And it's like, that's where you're gonna sit pretty much the whole time when you're riding this bike, because first gear and second gear will take you up to 60 and beyond. And if you are going hard in third, you're going to be well over a ton, I have heard. So you're going to spend most of your time in second gear, which is, it's a great time. The bike does reward you giving it that little bit of extra throttle. Whereas the last bike I rode before this was the Speed Triple from Triumph, which has got a lot more torque. You can sit lower down in the revs and you've got that grunt to get you moving, whereas this, being that torque is a little bit lower, means that you want to have it and you're going to be kind of ragging it a little bit harder to get that performance out of the bike. Suspension, it's quite stiff. It's definitely not massively comfortable. You know, it's a sports bike. You're not going to be doing long motorway journeys on this. You're going to be turning around the A roads and the B roads, and you're going to be going through town. So suspension is quite stiff, and I think that partly it's the seat isn't particularly soft. So those bumps, when you hit them, you do feel it. Now, talking about suspension, on the front we've got inverted Marzocchi 43mm shocks and then a single shock on the back. When it comes to brakes, we've got twin floating discs with 4 piston calipers from Brembo on the front and a single floating disc with a 2 piston caliper on the back, also from Brembo. So it's full of good tech. Interesting, we've got the steering dampener here on the front as well, which I haven't seen on a recent sports bike. Like Triumph don't have them. It's usually for super bikes where we've got this kind of steering dampener, but nice to see it on a bike like this. However, the thing that sets this bike apart, the thing which I haven't yet talked about that you're going to be the most interested in, is why it's called the SCS. and that is because it has a smart clutch system. What is that? Basically, it turns this manual bike into effectively a semi-automatic. So the smart clutch system basically works by disengaging the gear when you get to lower revs. So you can pull up to a junction, to a set of traffic lights, put it in first gear, and you don't need to touch the clutch at all. You don't need to pull it in. You don't even need to pull it in when you put it from neutral into first. The smart clutch system allows you to do it. It's almost like a semi-automatic, but then you do have to click up and click down through the gears to change gear. So it's not a full automatic. It doesn't do it all for you. It just means you don't need to use the clutch at all. It's almost obsolete. However, if you want to, then you can. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds. I've been driving it around and it is easy because if you're used to having a quick shifter, then it's just clicking up through the gears anyway. This has that quick shift down too, so you can click down and it will match the revs quite nicely. But it's when you're pulling up to a light and a junction, if you're used to having a manual motorbike and not driving a scooter or an automatic, then you do want to pull that clutch in, and you actually don't need to. You can just leave that bike to do it all for itself. So very cool tech. I like it. It makes it very easy in traffic. You know, if you're sat there and you're constantly on that clutch, you don't have to be when you've got the SCS, which is wonderful. And then we're going to move on to the screen. Okay, so the tech on this bike, the screen, there's 4 rider modes. There's obviously rain, road, race, and custom, so you can kind of set it up as you like it. They are very much what they would say on the tin. So with the rain, it kind of lowers the torque, lowers the throttle response, makes the bike softer, so you're less likely to spin the tires, and then that gradually increases as you go through the rider modes. It does have traction control as well, which you can shift from 1 to 5, 5 being the most aggressive traction control. It won't let you spin the wheels at all, but then with 1 it will allow you more slip, more spin before it cuts the power, and to try and regain that traction. Obviously ABS as standard as well. The thing which for me this bike kind of gets let down on is the screen. It is very dull, quite, I hate to say it, but almost looks outdated now with some of the new stuff that's coming through from Triumph. I'd want to see hopefully a nice colour screen coming out soon. That would make this whole thing look and feel much more premium just with the addition of that screen. But that being said, the bike is a very premium product, and you are actually, I feel like you're paying for the name and for the design, the way it looks, because this bike is about £15,000. It's quite expensive. So, anyway, I bet you want to know what it's like to drive, how I've been feeling on it as 2 other bikes go by. I've been really enjoying it once I got used to the way that the engine responds and sitting in lower gears instead of trying to let the torque do the work. I'm riding it a lot harder. It has been a lot of fun. It does feel a little bit heavier, kind of turning in, going through the corners, and it doesn't feel quite as light. Although it is 175 kilos, it's not heavy. It just doesn't feel as nimble and as agile as something like, say, a Street Triple from Triumph. So, all in all, I very much enjoyed this bike. It has been a great ride. I love the styling. I love that flare. The detail to it, you'd feel proud riding this bike. You would definitely stick out and get a lot of attention. So I'm gonna have to wrap things up, go for another ride, get out of here and make the most of the time I've got with this MV Augusta Brutale 800 RR SCS. My name's been David Bertelsall. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you like what we're doing here and you want to see more. And also check out the links in the description from Krazy Horse where I borrowed this bike. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it. See you guys in the next one.